Hello and welcome to my video, MGTOW, no hard numbers, men in prison for alimony and child support. Okay, I'll be quickly quoting the New York Times. There is no national count of how many parents are incarcerated for failure to pay child support, and the enforcement tactics varies from state to state, as do policies such as whether parents facing jail are given court-appointed lawyers. Now, there is an estimate of 50,000 people are in prison for child support arrears in the United States. In the first instance, it's very curious as to why doesn't the government record how many people are in prison for child support. For example, if you are saying they have committed a crime and they are criminals and they go to prison, why would you simply not record it as such? Say that I state explicitly, if you fail to pay alimony, depending on the court and the judge, again, that can send you straight to prison. And of course, if you're paying alimony and child support, failure to pay either is going to land you in prison. So it's like a 1-2 punch in the face. So is it fair and reasonable that MGTOW should use the fact that men go to prison for child support as an argument to bolster their case? I would argue absolutely. Just because we do not have an exact number doesn't make it any different. And by the same logic, in London they had a recent tragedy where a tower block caught on fire, and they're still basically adding numbers to the death count. Just because we don't have an exact death count doesn't mean it's any less tragic. It's not really going to make any more impact. Let's say if 10, 20, 50, 200, 300, 450 died, what difference does it make? It was the fact that they died in possibly a tragic way. Now, what about the other MGTOW argument, to which there is also no hard numbers? By this, I'm referring to the number of men, and very rarely women, who have to work additionally hard, as in getting a second job, downsizing their life, to avoid going to prison for not paying child support. Now, if we have the estimate of 50,000 people are in prison for not paying child support, in your mind, how many times should we multiply this to say, okay, let's say, for example, we multiply it by 4. So we're saying, oh yeah, and there's at least 200,000 men who are working a second job to not go to prison for not paying child support. Now, if someone was or someone is one of these men, and super rarely women working 2 jobs or downsizing their life to avoid going to prison, it is not hyperbolic in any sense of the word that this person is a wage slave. But can't they just appeal to the courts to lower the child support fees? Of course they can, and they can get denied like most men usually do when it comes to the courts. And again, that's going to be at legal cost. I've been reading some articles, and lots of people who go to prison for child support didn't even receive any sort of legal counselling or legal advice. They didn't have a lawyer there. So to repeat the point for this argument, should MGTOW, even though we don't have hard numbers of the number of people who avoid going to prison, should they be using that as an argument to bolster their position? And again, I have to say absolutely, because it's a real thing, and we know people. And you could go as far and say, well, this is the definition of oppression. That you're making someone work 2 jobs, 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, live in the smallest apartment, never go out, live the most minimalistic lifestyle, and then all their money is being paid to the government to avoid going to prison. And obviously, just in case you wasn't aware, when you do go to prison, your child support payments keep on mounting up. So the second you get out of prison, you need to pay them, but you then also have a criminal record. And then sometimes they say, okay, in some courts in the USA, they say, okay, you've got 90 days to pay your, however, let's say it was a year long. So you've got 90 days to pay your year-long child support bill, and you're now an ex-convict. And then, surprise, surprise, when the person fails to pay it, they end up in prison. Like, wow, this seems like a very fair and just system. It's almost like they seem to have incentivized it this way. I will go into more detail, but I just thought I would illustrate these two arguments that I've seen used and just sort of explain them and judge if they're sort of fair, justified and valid. And I honestly think they are. And I take actually great issue with people that deny this as a possible reality. And they just say like, oh no, you wouldn't go to prison for child support payments. If you live in the USA, this is a real issue. It isn't so bad in the UK, fortunately. The UK's child support payments are a lot more reasonable, but I'll go into detail in a later video on that. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening, watching, and goodbye.